You are true heroes. Next, Josh Dreyer will read his Voice of Democracy learning essay.
I'd like to take a second to again thank all the veterans for their service. My great-grandfather died about a year ago, and he was my hero and my mentor, and he taught me a lot of what I know, and it's to him that I dedicate this speech. If you would ask me on December 30th of last year if heroes still existed, I would have answered no with absolute certainty. My great-grandfather, my hero, died that day and left behind a family who sometimes still has no idea how the world kept moving as though nothing had happened. My grandfather served our country during World War II as a ham radio operator in the Army. He traveled with generals and commanders, often in the hearts of battles, where Morse code communication was crucial to the execution of battle plans. As a young child, the stories he shared with me were exciting and sparked my imagination. I was a soldier in his barn, tapping out messages to my comrades, saving us from death and losses, awaiting my hero's welcome as I arrived home. As often happens, the magic of those fantasies faded as I grew and transformed into darker things, things that, when no longer shielded by the innocence of youth, were harder to conceive and difficult to think about. My grandfather told me of the men he traveled with, fought beside, befriended, the men that he watched lose limbs and eyes and sanity, and sometimes lives. Many of those men were 18 years of age, a milestone I will achieve in just a few weeks, and I often find myself thinking, how did they do it? Like so many of my peers, what I perceive as hardships and injustice is nothing in the face of what these extraordinary men did. They went from farms and high schools, baseball fields and graduation parties, and to the eye of a raging storm. And they went without question and without protest, out of duty to their country. However, they didn't go without fear. Perhaps Dan Rather put it best. Courage is being afraid, but going on anyhow. It is often the war veterans that we describe as heroes. This is not without reason. The greatest of those heroes, though, seem to stay in touch with their fellow soldiers as they return to the society they fought so hard to protect, but rather those who come home in silence, a flag draped over their coffins, left to speak for them. It has been 2 years now since my cousin returned home, a memory, a son, a brother, a hero, but ultimately, a casualty. Along his final journey home, he was given the welcome of a hero. He was escorted from his plane and led to his hometown by area law enforcement with flashing lights. The roads were lined with people holding flags, hands over their hearts, a woman in her garden, eyes to the sky, a veteran in his wheelchair along a dirt road, waving his tattered flag. A man, perhaps 30 years of age, covering his face in grief as Matt's hearse passed by. An entire school system lining the streets, a silent tribute, immortalizing their hero and thanking him for his service. His death marked the second time that he had been wounded in battle. The first injury he sustained was received under fire as he provided cover for his fellow soldiers. He received the Silver Star and Purple Heart for his heroic actions that day, but when recovering from that injury, all he spoke of was being able to return to his brothers in arms. One of the things that Matt said remains with me still. I'm not a hero. The real heroes are the guys that don't make it, those that are killed in action. 2 years later, he was one of them. Are there heroes left then, you ask? And my mind wanders back to that December day and those that followed, and my heart recalls the hurt and the sorrow and the pain Those moments, trying to be brave and not cry, to be a man for my mother, while at the same time trying to forget about the boy playing war hero in his grandfather's barn. On that day, in those moments, I would have said no, the heroes are gone. However, since then, a new light has dawned within me. It wasn't how they died that made them heroes. It wasn't the flags on their graves or the salutes at their coffins. It was how they lived their lives. Do the heroes of my youth still exist? No, they never did. Those heroes were without flaw, without fear, and had bravery that knew no limits. They were immortal. So again you ask, do heroes still exist today? Wholeheartedly, yes. They're the soldiers in uniform serving our country. They're the people who serve in non-profit jobs to help the impoverished. They are the mothers and fathers who sacrifice each day to provide a better life for their children. They are teachers, nurses, doctors, volunteers. They are brothers and sisters and strangers who offer hope with a small act of kindness and no expectation of anything in return. Benjamin Disraeli once said, "The legacy of heroes is the memory of a great name and the inheritance of a great example." I have been fortunate to know of so many heroes and to recognize how many more exist around me. They're not only heroes in quiet deeds and actions, but also in motivation. They are people who have inspired me to do my best in hopes that perhaps someday my grandchildren might play in a barn with one idea of heroism, and then, as they age, grow to realize, just as I did, that true heroes aren't immortal, but their examples and memories certainly are.